Welcome in, everybody, to Inside the Borough. We are back in a somewhat good mood because FAU basketball beat the heck out of Coastal Georgia yesterday, but football left us in kind of a down mood. So luckily they got that going for us. Welcome in, everybody. Kevin Fielder rejoining us. Robbie Lastella, as always, here with you. So as we mentioned, football not as good last week, but basketball, after a week off, they gave us a lot to give us some hope, going into a pretty tough stretch coming up. They're going to play some West Coast teams, which have been off to a pretty good start. We'll get into basketball in the back half. We'll talk about football here in the front half. Kevin, welcome back. How's it going?
I mean, I wish we could be talking about a winning football game, but unfortunately, I think that Tulane's team is just better. I don't even have an opinion on, how it happened. I think you just got beat by a better football team. And you know what, man? Sometimes you just got to tip your cap because they had answers to just about everything. FAU had dialed up, drawn up. I mean, John Summerall is going to be a wanted man in a few weeks, if he's not already one of the most wanted men in college football.
I'm hearing Auburn on the social media channels. I never know, though, if it's a burner account or not. That's the joys that we live in on Twitter nowadays. It didn't come from Scott Hughes, though. I promise that. But nevertheless, to your point, I agree. They definitely did a lot of scheme stuff in game. In the third quarter, they completely took Easton Messer out of the game. He went from having 7 receptions for over 100 yards in the first half to no catches in the third quarter, no catches most of the fourth quarter until their last drive. So they made a concerted effort to kind of end FAU's their offense was humming there for a little bit. And then start the second half, it was kind of not. And I think, I don't even know if it was humming. There was definitely some points where it was up at the pass game. They were making some plays, but, as usual, the lack of run game really, really hurt them. And the turnovers, lack of run game and turnovers right now, not going to win many ball games doing it that way. As you mentioned, Tulane is a pretty good team. So when you're hurting yourself against a really good team, that's going to be a recipe for disaster. Now, in that game, I did like seeing, they did fight. They didn't just quit. I don't think we're seeing this team quit. They played to the end, but to have the same issues plague them, especially you come out in the third quarter, they had back-to-back defensive stops down 11, and they don't get any points offensively. There's just something not clicking there, and there's only 2 games left here on the schedule, so I don't know how much of a massive change we'll see down this stretch. Hopefully, potentially, we could get Xavier Terrell back in the run room. Does that spark something to help the offense find a footing? Maybe. But you're playing 2 pretty good teams this week, Kevin. You got UConn, or two good teams over the next 2 weeks. You got UConn this weekend and ECU the following weekend. Both teams having really, really, really good years. ECU could really be in for something special if some things go their way in the American Conference. Kevin, I know it's going to be difficult to really string together 2 wins here, but what are your thoughts overall over the next 2 weeks here?
I want them to fight whoever made their schedule this year because I look through the schedule and I knew the schedule was tough heading into the year. I'm well aware that it was going to be tough heading into the year, but you have to play Tulane, UConn, and ECU in back-to-back-to-back weeks. The football gods, the scheduling gods were not looking down on you because that is one of the toughest stretches in Group of 5 football. I mean, we're talking about a potential playoff contender in Tulane. We're talking about one of the better Group of 5, Group of 6, kind of like fringe teams in UConn, who is 2-1 in ACC play this year. They don't even play in the ACC. And then ECU, who at times looks like a juggernaut out there. And they have the coolest player in college football in Mike Wright, who I'm sure we'll talk about in about a week's time. But he punts the ball, he runs the ball, he catches the ball, he throws the football, and he also plays defensive back for them.
Doesn't he probably work a 9 to 5?
I'm pretty sure he also works a 9 to 5. He probably flies their team plane, drives their team bus, and also just does everything else for the football team. It would not shock me if they have him call plays at some point before the season's over, just so he can check that off on the boxes. Because, I mean, he's done I think he had like a 50-yard punt in their last game. We're talking about a quarterback who is punting like traditional punting, not like pooch punting, because you're backed up. It's just traditional punting. He's punting, just a punt. Coolest player in football. But I mean, this is a tough stretch of football to play. I mean, you get them both at home. That's a benefit. UConn has a major flaw on defense with the fact that they haven't stopped the run well at all this year. ECU, while they have looked really good in these last 4 games, had some issues early on the year where I thought they maybe looked a little beatable. I mean, it doesn't get easy. If you want it easy, man, you're watching the wrong football team, I think, because these next 2 games, man, they're going to be a challenge and a half.
Yeah. In UConn specifically, Zach Kelly was talking today. They are one of the top teams in the country in turnover differential. FAU is dead last. So I think that's going to be telling right there. I mean, 3 interceptions last week for Caden Veldkamp and a brutal fumble from Easton Messer on a punt. I mean, brutal from the sense that the sun was beating down on his eyes as well. Brutal from the sense that Tulane was able to score on the very next play. Just nothing good was going on there. And then the 3 interceptions for Veldkamp, I'd say the first one definitely wasn't his fault because it bounced off the guy's hands. But the other 2 might be his fault. I mean, we heard, Kitley talk about it after the game. He's been dealing with a shoulder injury. And, maybe, it's not like he's throwing ducks out there, but at the same time, is there not as much zip on there as there once was with the shoulder injury that he's dealing with right now? Maybe. Kitley didn't outly deny that.
I think so. I think so.
And so that leads me to my next question is, what does the offense look like this week against UConn? I mean, you mentioned it, their run defense isn't the best. So that opens the door. Is this a week where FAU can get going on the ground? I'm not going to say that it's going to, spark something because it's week to week at this point. Week to week. They could go 1 week and they could rush for 100 yards like they did against Tulsa, and the offense looks good because they have a run game. Or they can have 9 yards rushing at the half like they did last week, and the offense looks well.
And their longest run be like 10 yards in the entire game.
It's week to week at this point, and I do, as much as you want to say, every team can be good, every team has their deficiencies, and as FAU's been able to beat up on the bad teams on the ground, and they've struggled against the teams that are good on the ground. And so, with that being said, this is a week where they can get going. KSD, Jamari Sands, who's slowly getting better, like health-wise, he's starting to get back to close to early season. There was a series there in the second half where I really noticed Jamari start to get going. And if Xavier can come back, if FAU can get all 3 backs going, not turn the ball over because they have a run game, because the pass game isn't trying to do too much, the pass game might have to be reeled back in this week because Caden's shoulder isn't as 100%. And if that is the case, you really need a run game. I don't know how much they'll dial it back. It's a big part of the offense, the deep shots. They're not going to eliminate it. But having a run game would make everyone in that room feel a lot better and probably limit the turnovers. So biggest thing for me against UConn this week, as Kitley mentioned, with the turnover differential that UConn has been able to force. They don't turn it over offensively. Their quarterback, Joe Fasano, is still no interceptions.
He has one. He has one interception. One interception all year.
Oh yeah, okay. Well, okay, yeah. He's thrown one interception.
For context, he's thrown the ball 388 times this year.
So unless they fumble it, FAU's probably not forcing a turnover this week. Although they've gotten interceptions in back-to-back weeks after having 0 the entire season before that. So statistic anomalies happen for this FAU team. Maybe they pick off Joe Fasano 3 times. I don't know. No, but however they need to do it in terms of winning the turnover differential. They can't lose it. They might, if it's 0-0, so be it. But they can't lose the turnover differential against UConn in this game if they want to have a chance. Now, on the defensive side of the ball, the pressure last week for FAU was better at times. I will say they were able to get to Retzlaff a little bit, but not a whole ton. They were definitely much better the week before against Tulsa, and so that's one way they can try to get after Fajano a little bit. But to me, this game comes down to righting their wrongs from a year ago. UConn rushed for like 400 something yards last year on the ground. That was one of the most atrocious performances I've ever seen in my life on the ground. And this game, if they can right their wrongs and find a way to slow down UConn on the ground and make them one-dimensional, it's going to be hard to frustrate Fajano. He's looked really, really good. But if they can make him one-dimensional, that's one way to do it. And I think that's my key to success is limit their run game and don't turn the ball over. You're not going to, you can game plan all day to try to frustrate Fajano. I think he's too good of a quarterback, and I just don't think we're there to really frustrate him, but we can put it together to try to frustrate their run game and make them one-dimensional. What do you think specifically for UConn this week, Kevin?
FAU's defense, I looked at this earlier, and you might have a different opinion. I think this is going to be the toughest offense they'll have to face this year. Between the fact that they don't turn the ball over, between the fact they have a 1,000-yard rusher who is effective, who's efficient, who can carry a lot of the load on that side of the ball, but then there's a 6-foot figure at wide receiver who might as well be the best group of 5 wide receiver in college football this year, point blank period. Skylar Bell is going to be playing on Sundays next year. I think he's going to be a very impactful player on Sundays. And this year he's been effectively the entire source of UConn's offense at times. It is very much like, hey, where's Skylar Bell? How can we generate him touches? There was a stretch earlier this year against Boston College, Rice, and UAB, which I get it. Those are not 3 of the best teams in college football, where he had over 120 yards and I think 5 touchdowns in a 3-game stretch. This guy, if you don't account for him at wide receiver, it doesn't matter what game plan you have. If you don't have a solution to play Skylar Bell on defense, to defend him effectively, to put pressure on him, to have to make plays, it doesn't matter what game plan, what scheme, what anything you drew up otherwise, because he'll beat you for 200 yards. He'll beat you for 130 yards. To my money, that's the key for FAU. It's finding a way to contain Skylar Bell. And when I say contain Skylar Bell, I don't mean stop Skylar Bell, because last year Skylar Bell only had 1 catch for like 40 yards against FAU. I don't think we're getting that again. Every game this year, he's been effective. His lowest total is like 50 yards. And that was in a win where they ran the ball a lot. The truth is, you're not going to contain him or stop him. You have to contain the explosive plays. You have to keep him out the end zone. You have to find a way to account for him. And I think, truthfully, the way you do that is you have to double team him. You have to force someone else on that offense to beat you, because a lot of their passing game success has come from Skylar Bell and Fajano, their quarterback, being able to find each other and make big time highlight reel plays. If you can stop one part of that equation, it's going to change the way that they play offense. I think that's the biggest key. Now, the unfortunate thing, there's no easy way to do that. I went through and I watched the film. I tried to figure out a way to do it. I don't have an answer. I sit here, I don't have an answer as to how you stop that, because some of it is like you have to find a way to get pressure. And, well, FAU's Achilles heel on defense this year has been that they don't get consistent pressure. You have to find a way to be aggressive with Skylar Bell, but not, have penalties, DPIs, holdings. Good luck is all I'm going to say, and Godspeed, because, look, man, I think that's going to be the toughest matchup they have. Just in terms of having to play a wide receiver this year, Skylar Bell might be a 3rd-round pick in this upcoming NFL draft. And he plays like one of the best wide receivers in college football. Man, it's going to be a tough matchup. Like, it just is going to be. And that's going to be the biggest key, is I think you have to find a way to take him out of the game as much as possible so he doesn't get 150 yards. And that, they have to run the ball a little bit more. They have to be a little bit more one-dimensional. But I think the way you make them one-dimensional is taking the ball out of Skylar Bell's hands, not taking the ball out of Cam Edwards' hands.
We'll see if they can do that. I gave the easier option. If they can do what Kevin suggested, well, they'll be in some pretty good shape. Terez Reed has been really strong outside lately for FAU, and I'm interested to see what they kind of throw defensively at him, like you mentioned, a double team. So we'll see. I'm not counting him out. I'm definitely, not predicting a victory by any stretch just yet, but we don't do predictions on this show. And I think that, if they're going to, prove it, or make a late push here, this is their last chance. So I think they're going to come out fired up. I think, we've seen guys start to come back slowly over the last couple of weeks, whether that's Sands, whether that's Akovich, and so guys are starting to come back. The guys aren't leaving, and that's an intriguing sign late season. We'll see if they can translate that into a very big win here against UConn, because if so, that'll set up a match against ECU next week matchup where that game could be on ESPN, ESPN2 potentially. And not only are you playing for a bowl game on national TV, you're playing big time spoiler. So we don't want to get too ahead of ourselves, but lot to play for this week before you play for a lot more potentially next week if they can get it done. We'll see. Get to the flag this weekend if you're in Boca. I'll be there. So, but that'll kind of segue us into basketball season. It's getting into to gear a little bit after a week off. FAU got back to it last night. Beat Coastal Georgia, I believe 92-63. I don't have the final score in front of me, but I think that sounds right.
That's correct.
Let's go.
Good job.
Got that memorized. That's always score and time of game are two things, pre-game and post-game, that always manage to escape me. But nevertheless, they did look really, really, in my opinion, solid out of a bye week. You don't want to judge too much against an NAIA team, but first half they got back to really assisting the ball well. That was a struggle against Liberty, although it trailed off a little bit in the second half. And I think we saw Devin Vanderpool really continue his scoring breakout. In the first two games of the season, he had like 14 rebounds and 3 steals. He was stuffing the stat sheet in different ways. And now in the last 2 games combined, he scored 54 points. And then yesterday, he still had 8 rebounds. Like, the guy's doing it in a variety of different ways. And he scored 10 points in a row in a period there in the second half yesterday, where I just thought he took over the game. To me, it was Nelly against North Texas a couple years ago, or any, you pick any Elijah Martin Nelly moment from a couple years ago, and that was just obviously NAIA team. Obviously, we're not crowning championship here or anything, but still, I saw similarities of his ability to take that game over. He was on the bench. Things weren't getting too close, but you could tell FAU's offense was trailing a little bit, and Coastal Georgia, for what it's worth, they were hitting some shots. So they bring Dev back off the bench. He scores 10 in a row. It's impressive. That's impressive. And I also liked what I saw from the bigs, obviously, against an undersized team, but they had a diverse ability out there with multiple different groups, and I think that can cause some problems for smaller teams when we get to conference play. I really liked seeing Xander and Vince play together. I think that could be a very dangerous duo. Kevin, what was sticking out for you in hoops?
I don't know what you take away from a game against an NAIA team. To me, thinking about this in terms of an entire season-long sample size, what are you looking for out of an NAIA team? Because the truth is, everyone on FAU's roster is probably one of the best players on Coastal Georgia's roster. I think that's just probably the easiest way to explain this. It's like, I look down FAU's roster. I think everyone on FAU's roster, bar maybe Liam Dako Green, is probably the best player on Coastal Georgia's roster. And Liam Dako Green might be the best player on Coastal Georgia's roster. I don't want to disrespect Liam.
I was going to say.
I truthfully just haven't watched him that much, so I don't know. But there were concerns. I think there are things you have to monitor. The fact that Coastal Georgia shot 48% from 3 is concerning. on the flip side, they shot under 30% on 2-point attempts. So maybe you're willing to live with that a little bit. FAU didn't quite shoot the ball as well as you'd hope so, 26% from three, but they shot really well inside the arc. Cannon Carlisle, I think you want more out of him as a starting player who's going to play a majority of your minutes. He looked a little timid, wasn't taking shots. I think he attempted all of 9 shots, most of them 3-pointers. He's kind of forcing things a little bit. I'm not going to sit here and say he's reverting back to Indiana form because, I mean, I think that's a completely different scenario, but you need to see more out of him when you start playing some of these tougher non-conference games. But overall, I mean, I think the most encouraging thing is that your bench got to play 15 minutes. And I know that's probably not good for talking about the game on a podcast, but the truth is, to me, that's the most encouraging thing is that every single bench player got to play 10 minutes a game, 10 minutes in that game. I mean, that to me is you gave everyone game action. Congratulations. You did exactly what you needed to do against Coastal Georgia, and you won the game by almost 30 points. I'm not concerned. There's not enough things that I sit and come away from that game going, well, they have to improve this. 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 I think we need to see what they do against another Division I opponent first. And they have one coming up that will be a good test to see what kind of team this is heading into, I think, one of the tougher stretches on their schedule. But truthfully, I don't think there's a lot of things that I'm hitting the panic button on or things that I think we need to discuss deeply. I think a lot of it is just kind of I mean, you're playing this game to get a free win on the schedule, and you got a free win on the schedule.
Yeah, I mean, I NAIA team to me is probably not the level you want to play. Although I respect all levels of basketball. I don't want to get hated on by the people who.
Well, I don't look. I don't know if you want to play a Division II team this year because if you've looked at college basketball, that seems to be the toughest matchup for every one of these teams.
But my point being, it's a game on the schedule. You got to treat it like any other game, and I think they did that. They didn't play under their opponent. They didn't disrespect them either, and so I think that was it is what it is type of game. But I definitely did like what I saw from the different big sets. I thought that was cool, and Dev doing Dev things. So those are my 2 big takeaways. And the 3-point defense struggling is what it is against Coastal Georgia, but don't want that to become a trend. They are trending towards the bottom of the country right now and allowed 3-point percentage about 40% and so got to find a way to to improve that over these next couple of games. You got Pacific at home on Thursday, a team which has been down over the last couple years, but hasn't, they're off to a pretty solid start here this season. And then you go play a team that's really off to a hot start, their best start since 2017 in Loyola Marymount on Monday. I'm forgetting the name. I'm actually looking up the name of this tournament because I always like to know the name. But this is the Sunshine Slam.
Love a nice MTE.
Yeah, the Sunshine Slam MTE. The campus game is obviously, as I mentioned, Pacific, and then LMU, and then they'll play if they win, they'll play the winner of George Mason, Ohio. If they lose, they'll play the loser. So we'll see. How that shapes out. We won't kind of predict that yet, but in terms of Pacific, they're 3-1 on the year. Out of the West Coast Conference, a conference where, if you guys aren't familiar, they put multiple teams in the NCAA tournament every year. Pacific hasn't been one of them recently, but they're looking to get there. They've picked up 2 close wins over Nevada and Long Beach State, as well as a 12-point win over Cal State Fullerton. Or excuse me, they lost by 1 to Nevada. My apologies. But they did beat Long Beach State by 3 and then defeated Cal State Fullerton by 12, as well as a 30-point win over their cousin, maybe their brother, Life Pacific University. I don't know. That might be like a related family member, but still, nevertheless, they've gotten out to a pretty solid start. They've only got 2 guys in double figures, but they got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys averaging 6 or more. So a little top heavy there, but once they get past those first 2, they've been able to get scoring from a bunch of different guys. Leading scorer on the year for them is Elias Ralph, a 6'7" senior forward from the Okotoks. I think that's Alberta, Canada. So We've
That's a
seen
little Canadian accent.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of. I think that's really cool. We're seeing a lot of different players from Canada come to the States and start to insert their touch on the game. So I think that's pretty cool. But Elias, 16 points a game, 7.8 boards, 43% from the field. Got a little bit of a 3-point game to him. Shot 6 of 9 from 3 against Nevada. So that's where Devin Williams and Xander Pinelon's stretch big ability will be big. And their top guard is TJ Wainwright, a senior. So they got 2 seniors leading the way. That's always a good way you want to have it. And although TJ transferred in from Long Beach State last season. So Kevin, I don't know if you're I doubt you're sitting over there watching
I've watched them this year. I've watched Pacific this year. Let's be clear.
Was it the Life Pacific game?
No, it was the Nevada game. I was not watching them against the Life Pacific. I don't even know if you could watch that game on television. I'm not gonna lie.
Well, it was Baller TV probably.
That's on Flow Sports. I mean, this is a decent Pacific team. I kind of caution that their 2 wins this year have been against teams who KenPom has ranked 250th or lower, which generally that means that they're playing bad opponents. They're playing opponents that they should win. They've won both of them. I think to some degree you can only play the games on the schedule and you got to win the games on the schedule. In terms of what they do, first of all, they're an incredibly experienced basketball team. They're, I think, 50th in terms of Division I minutes this year, according to KenPom, and their entire rotation, bar one player, is a junior or a senior. That to me shows that they know what they're doing on the court and that they don't make a lot of mistakes. They make a lot of threes. They make the threes that they take, but they don't take a lot of threes. I think they shoot about 37% from 3, but they're in the middle of the pack in terms of 3-point attempts per game. Typically a sign that they're going to find the best possible shot. Kind of evident by their tempo as well. They don't play exactly very fast. They don't play slow, though. They're kind of, again, middle of the pack in terms of that. I think the biggest thing for FAU is you have to create turnovers against Pacific. And that's been an issue for them all season, has been that they turn the ball over a lot. They can't really create turnovers. And I think when you look at the way that FAU plays on offense, they want to get out, they want to play fast, they want to be able to play in transition. The best way to do that is by creating turnovers, by creating havoc. Very similar to football, right? The best way to win a football game is creating havoc plays. Best way to win a basketball game is by being the aggressor. And I think that to some degree, that's been their bread and butter to some degree, FAU. And I think this is a good matchup for them to exploit because Pacific turns the ball over quite a bit. They don't create a lot of turnovers. And I think if you're looking at a team like FAU, they can get aggressive, especially in the backcourt. I mean, you're talking about a game that can get out of hand pretty quickly. And I know that KenPom has this game at about a 5-point win for FAU. I think this can be a bigger win. Of course, you still have to play the game. It doesn't matter what I say before the game starts, but I think that there is enough from what I've seen out of Pacific and what I've seen out of FAU for me to be encouraged that this can be a game that they can walk away from with a semi-comfortable win. I'm not going to sit here and say I expect them to win by 20 points or whatever, but I think they should win this game.
Yeah, I do think Pacific is definitely a winnable game. They're not too much of a 3-point heavy team, so I don't think this will be a game where that negative of the FAU defense is affected too much. And it could be a game where they find a way to bounce back as the volume of threes they face won't be too much. However, the next game they play against LMU, different story. While KenPom given FAU a 5-point favorite in that one, ESPN, I have the ESPN predictor up for this game. They say LMU is a 72.1% favorite in this one. They've gotten out to a red hot start, 6-0 on the year, their best start since 2017. They beat UCSB last night in overtime, and they've also picked up wins against Troy, UTEP, Eastern Washington, and Arkansas Pine Bluff out of the Division I ranks, as well as an absurd 137-54 victory over Lincoln University, California. Look up that school if you have any chance. go down a rabbit hole. It's basically like
Have
fishing.
fun.
More.
Have fun.
But anyway, back to LMU. They've been off to a red hot start. They are one of the best 3-point shooting teams in the country. They got a lot of guys who can shoot it from deep. So if FAU's 3-point defense is indeed a problem, and it's not just a little snafu here, this is the game where they're going to have to prove that, as LMU shoots a high volume of triples and they make them. At least they have so far this season. They've got 4 players double figures and 3 more averaging 5 or more. So they get a wide variety of scoring from a lot of different places. The Mount, Kevin, what's led Loyola Marymount to some success here in the early part of the season?
This is one of my favorite teams to watch in college basketball this year because they're such a weird basketball team. You look at some of their advanced metrics, and as I look over to my other monitor, which has some of this stuff written down, 314th in pace, which means they're one of the slowest teams in terms of basketball. They play a lot of half-court basketball. They're going to sort of slow the pace down. It's going to be a really tough matchup for FAU in that sense because FAU hasn't had to play a lot of teams that play incredibly slow. And yet, typically when you see teams that play slow, you expect them to take a lot of 2-pointers to try and get the best possible shot. They take a ton of threes. And they make a ton of threes. They're shooting 41.8% from 3 this year. That's how they were able to come back against Santa Barbara. That's how they were able to put away Troy. That's how they were able to put away UTEP. They currently hold the second longest winning streak in the country at 6 games. This is a good basketball team. Does not mean that this is a team that FAU can't beat, but when you consider that they shoot the ball a lot, they shoot the ball well, and they also are one of the tallest teams in college basketball, I get a little concerned. That length is going to cause FAU problems. I think you'll see a lot more kind of 2 big lineups against them because, you have guys like Pintalon who can play kind of as a stretch big, Devin Williams who can stretch the ball out, right? You can take that length away from them if you can stretch the game out and play them a little bit differently. The biggest guy I think that you have to watch is, and I may be butchering this name because, look, man, I'm not a freaking international pronunciation savant. Jan Vide? I'm going to assume it's Vide. It typically is Vide. Incredibly fun player, really good playmaker, doesn't turn the ball over a lot, knows how to take and make his shots within the arc. And then another guy who I think is a very interesting player to watch is Jalen Shelley, who's done a lot for them this year, who's been a really solid player. He plays about 75% of their minutes. And when he's on the floor, he is going to be one of their main sources of production out of play. Look, man, this is going to be a tough game. I don't think this is going to be a game where FAU pulls ahead, and I don't think this is a game where FAU gets blown out. I think, we're still trying to figure out if Loyola Marymount's good or if they just had a good run. I will say I think that Santa Barbara game is an impressive win when you look at some of the talent that Santa Barbara has, including some guys that FAU tried to recruit this past recruiting cycle. But, this is a good basketball team in Loyola Marymount. They're going to cause FAU problems, especially, I think, on their offensive, their offense against FAU's defense. It's going to be a tough game. It's going to be a game where FAU has to figure some stuff out because, if you get into a situation where you have to play half-court offense against them, you lose the game. I think this is a game where you have to really dictate the pace and put it on Loyola Marymount to respond in terms of playing a little bit faster.
We shall see. I think, this game, their coach, as you mentioned, he's a disciple of Wojciechowski from Marquette. He was an assistant under him there, Stan Johnson. So there's a little bit of, you mentioned that slow pace. If I remember correctly, it's been a while since Wojo was at Marquette, but they ran a pretty slow.
I believe that was a very slower pace. Yeah. Shaka Smart doesn't do that. Shaka Smart's going to be pressing for 10 minutes a game and going like, hey, man, good luck.
Yeah.
It's kind of really funny to watch those two. But definitely a little bit slower of a team.
And so we're going to see, and you mentioned Jalen Shelley, they've got a couple guys like this. They're P5 bounce backs, just like FAU's got a couple P5 bounce backs. There's talent here, undeniable talent. And I think this game is definitely going to be a bit of a back and forth battle between two high scoring teams. And I think it's whichever one is able to slow down the other side from three. If FAU's streaky, I don't think that plays well, but they can counteract that by figuring out a way to slow down LMU. So definitely an interesting weekend coming up, or early week. These games are going to be Thursday against Pacific, and then Monday against LMU, and then they'll play Tuesday against the winner of George Mason or Ohio. And should FAU come out of this 3-0, 2-1 at worst, I mean, you're really starting to put together a really solid non-conference slate here, especially if your only losses to LMU over this 3-game stretch, or potentially
George Mason, who I think is also one of the better group or mid-major basketball teams this year.
You find a way to pick up a win against LMU or win against George Mason in this stretch, then you're really starting to cook with something. Because then you host St. Bonnie's next 2 weekends from now, I believe, after Thanksgiving, the 30th, and then you get into the real grind of it when you go and play St. Mary's on the road. And St. Mary's, they've put every mid-major team they've played so far this season into a blender. So we're not going to get too far ahead of ourselves, but that's going to be a real test. If FAU can go on the road and put up something with St. Mary's, then when we get there, that'll be something. But that'll wrap it up for this week of Inside the Borough. I do want to say we do at the Inside the Borough extend our condolences to the family of Chuck Sullivan. Chuck was the assistant commissioner of communications for the American Conference. So prayers up to his family as well as the extended family around the American Conference. Was always a friendly face around the confines of the American Conference. From whenever I first started, he was definitely good with names, which I always appreciated. So I always took the time to say hi, which not everyone does in these days. So we hope prayers up to the family of Chuck Sullivan in the American Conference. But for Kevin Fielder, I'm Robbie Lastella. We'll see you next week right here on Inside the Borough. Hopefully talking about a football matchup that does include bowl implications. We'll see. We'll see a lot in the balance when we talk to you next week right here on Inside the Borough.